The morning light always seemed softer in their home, as if the sun itself understood it was stepping into a place built on 60 years of love. Eleanor moved slowly now, her hands marked by time, yet steady as she poured tea into the cups that Thomas had carved decades ago in his workshop. The house was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the kettle and the creak of the old rocking chair where Thomas sat by the window. His breath was slower these days, but his eyes still carried the same calm devotion that had held her heart since she was a girl. For them, life had narrowed to the simplest of rituals. A walk around the garden when Thomas was strong enough, sharing a slice of bread at breakfast, and the way his hand always reached for hers, as though afraid she might slip away if he let go. These small things had become their world, fragile but precious. Yet beneath these moments lay an unspoken truth. Thomas was fading. His illness crept quietly, stealing strength a little at a time, and Eleanor felt its weight like a shadow trailing their every step. She remembered the man who once lifted her off her feet under blooming apple trees, the man who built the very table they sat at now, with hands that once seemed invincible. Now, those same hands trembled when he lifted his cup, and Eleanor would steady it gently, hiding her sorrow with a smile. He would thank her, though he never had to. His gratitude was written in the way his thumb brushed across her skin, still seeking her touch even in weakness. Nights were the hardest. When the house grew silent and Thomas's breathing became uneven, Eleanor would lie awake, fearing the moment his chest might not rise again. She would turn her gaze toward the ceiling, whispering silent prayers, asking for just one more day. One more morning where she could greet him with tea and sunlight. Yet she never spoke these fears aloud. Instead, she kept holding his hand, giving him the comfort of her presence. The neighbors sometimes wondered how she managed. Her own body had grown frail, her steps unsteady, but she carried on without complaint. She was not only his wife, she was his anchor, his keeper of memories, his gentle strength when his own failed him. Each morning, when Thomas looked at her with tired but grateful eyes, she knew that this was her purpose, and she would not let him face the shadows alone. It was in these quiet days, where nothing seemed extraordinary, that Eleanor began to understand the true depth of their love. It was not built on grand gestures or fleeting passion, but on the steady devotion of years, on countless mornings of shared tea and the simple act of never letting go. Thomas's strength waned more quickly as autumn settled in, the crisp air outside contrasting with the warmth of blankets that Eleanor tucked around him each evening. His days were slower now, his voice quieter, but his spirit still reached out to her in the same way it always had, with his hands searching for hers. Even when words failed, Eleanor never pulled away. She could feel the fragility of his skin beneath her fingers, but to her, his touch was the same as it had been when he first held her as a young bride. Their granddaughter Emily often visited, carrying the laughter of youth into the house. She would sit at their feet, listening as Thomas tried to tell stories of his younger days. His voice cracked, sometimes fading into silence, and Eleanor would step in, painting the pictures he could no longer complete. Emily heard about the nights when Thomas walked 3 miles in the rain just to see Eleanor's smile, about the time he built their first crib with nothing but scraps of wood and determination, and how he never once forgot the anniversary of the day they met. For Emily, these stories were treasures, but for Eleanor, they were lifelines, reminders of the man who still lived within the body, weakened by illness. She would glance at him as she spoke, her voice soft but steady, and she would see in his eyes the gratitude of someone who knew he was being remembered, not just as he was now, but as he had always been. Yet when Emily left and the evenings stretched quiet once more, sorrow often pressed heavily upon Eleanor's chest. She would sit beside him, watching his eyes flutter between sleep and wakefulness, and wonder how she would ever bear the silence once his hand was no longer there to find hers. Tears sometimes slipped down her cheeks, but she wiped them away before he could see. He deserved her strength, not her despair. Thomas, sensing her fear though she never spoke it, would squeeze her hand gently. It was his way of telling her he was still here. That love remained even as time unraveled his body. Eleanor often thought of their love as a candle, burning lower with each passing night. Yet she also knew that its light, however faint, still warmed the room, still lit Emily's eyes when she listened, still reminded her that love could endure even in the face of inevitable loss. The house was no longer filled with the noise of children or the bustle of busy years, but in the silence, there was something sacred. Their days had become fewer, Yet in each one, Eleanor discovered the strength to hold on not to the past alone, but to the very present moment where Thomas was still beside her. Hand in hand, heart to heart, winter arrived gently, with snow resting on the garden fence and a hush falling over the house. Eleanor kept the curtains open, so Thomas could see the white blanket outside, though his eyes were often half closed now, his breath shallow. She stayed beside him, her hand never leaving his, as if her touch alone could hold him here. There was no more need for words. Their love had grown beyond them, living in the silence, in the simple act of being present together. Emily visited more often, sensing the closeness of goodbye. She brought warmth with her, wrapping scarves around Eleanor's shoulders and whispering that she was not alone. Yet even Emily seemed to understand that this was a chapter Eleanor and Thomas needed to finish together, hand in hand, just as they had begun. She would watch quietly from a chair, moved by the devotion she witnessed, her heart forever marked by it. On a quiet evening, the fire low and the house still, Thomas's breathing grew uneven. Eleanor leaned closer, her eyes fixed on him, her hand tightening around his. She whispered softly, telling him she was there, telling him he could rest. He opened his eyes one last time, and in them she saw the boy she had loved, the husband who had built her life with his hands, the soul who had never once let go of her. A faint smile touched his lips, and with her hand in his, he slipped away as gently as falling asleep. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes, but she did not let go. She sat there in the dim light, their hands still joined, as if the warmth of his palm could linger forever. In that moment, grief and peace intertwined, sorrow for the parting, but gratitude for the love that had carried them through nearly a lifetime. When Emily stepped quietly forward, she knelt beside her grandmother, pressing her cheek against Eleanor's hand and whispering that his love would never truly leave them. Days later, as the family gathered to remember him, Eleanor spoke softly to Emily, telling her that love was not something death could steal. It lived on in every memory, every story retold, and in every heartbeat of those who remained. She reminded her granddaughter to never take for granted the chance to hold someone's hand, for it might be the simplest yet most profound gift of all. Eleanor's sorrow remained, but it was softened by the knowledge that their final promise had been kept. They had held hands until the end, proving that love stronger than time does not vanish. It becomes eternal, etched into the lives of those left behind. Love is not measured by the years we spend together, but by the way we choose to remain present. Even in life's quietest, most fragile moments, Eleanor and Thomas showed us that true devotion does not fade with age, nor does it surrender to loss. It lingers, it strengthens, and it inspires those who witness it. May their story remind us to cherish the hands we hold today, for they are treasures of the heart. If this story touched you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more stories of the human spirit.